right, is sponsored by Rabbi Yehuda Greenwood in honor of Rabbi Mordechai Loiterman. Thank you very much. And as Hakar Satov for my incredible teaching and dedication to Daf Yomi, we are continuing. Let's hope this works.
Okay.
We've started a couple of times with bad mics. We are continuing now about 10 lines down. And we were mentioning that we have to verify that somebody is a Torah adult in order to be able to perform marriage, in order to be divorced, in order to get chalitza, in order to be able to walk out of a marriage you can't be of marriageable age, and in order to sell parents' possessions, you have to be at least 20. The Kavan debut kana kedushin. So the Gemara's question is going to be: once we've already verified that somebody is of age to marry, legerushin lamali, then how could you wind up needing to be checked in order to get divorced? You got checked to get into the marriage. You're obviously an adult. Obviously, you're an adult when you have to get divorced.
Right.
So the answer is lo nitzracha ela yibum. The answer is there is a circumstance where you can get married underage when it comes to yibum. It's not because the Mishnah says ben tesha shana v'yom echad sheba'al yivim tov. When it comes to marriage, we said there are two parts. One is you're being physically mature enough to have relations, but also that you need to be of the age of consent, which we said is the part which you get to be 13 years old. You get to be old enough to be able to make proper choices. However, Yibum is not like that. Yibum, the Torah says that a certain individual, that a man is designated to his wife, his brother's wife, when the brother dies, he's designated and automatically set and attached. Therefore, no knowledge is necessary for that marriage to take place. All that is necessary for that marriage to take place is relations. Therefore, if relations happens, right, then they're married, even though he's only 9 years old in a day. He's only 9. So therefore, if he has relations with her before he is 13, and he's only 9 years old in a day, so then they are married. They nos in get. However, he would not be able to give her a get because, again, he's not aware enough to be able to be of consent, to be able to give a get, ad she gadel, until he gets older, to be 13.
If he's 9 and she's 30.
Yes. Weird, but not halachically inappropriate, right?
I'm
Just make sure that we understand the distinction. Yes, very strange. There's a difference between strange and halachically ineffective.
We'll leave it there.
Right. L'chalitza, right? Now, when it comes to chalitza, so then why is it telling us that she has to be, that we are going to check for chalitza? The answer is, lafuki mid Rabbi Yossi, that is specifically in order to go against the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Da'amar, he says, Ish ksuv b'parsha. When it comes to yibum, it says that a man who does not want to do yibum with his brother's wife performs chalitza. Now it says a man. It uses the word ish, indicating that chalitza can only be performed by an adult male, being 13 years old. Aval isha, but he says, Rabbi Yossi says, isha ben gedola ben katana. She doesn't say, the pasuk doesn't say a man or a woman who wants to do chalitza. It just says a man who wants to do chalitza has to be a man. But a woman, theoretically, could be also doing chalitza, or she could have been married when she was 10 by her father, right? We said she could be married off before. She's married off by 10 when she's by her father. Maybe she can do chalitza when she's 10 and get out of the marriage. Kamash malon, demakshinan isha ish. Kamash malon, that no, we are going to compare the man and the woman, and we're going to say that the halacha is the same. The details are given in this Yevamos, and it's delok Rabbi Yossi, and we do not follow the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, and that a woman can only do chalitza once she's 12 years old. So if she's 10, what does she do? She waits. We'll do it later. Ula mi'unin. Now, as far as mi'un is concerned, that we are going to do mi'un, that she can do mi'un up until the point at which she gets physical maturity of 2 hairs. Mi'un is the ability for the daughter, a girl who's married under the age of 12 by a brother or a mother, because she doesn't have a father anymore. If she had a father, the father would be midoraisa, be able to marry her off. But now that she doesn't have a father, midorabanan, they established the mother or the brother could marry her off. That's only a rabbinic marriage. If she does not want to stay married, she can walk out of it. Her choice. Without a get. Thank you. That's the most important point. She walks out without a get. However, once she gets to be 12 years old and she stays married, then she's considered to be now married to the fellow because they live together and can stay married. So therefore, at that point, the marriage continues and she can't walk out with it again. We're going to verify that she's not an adult before we let her walk out. So that's as far as mi'un is concerned. But why do we say that why do we have to bring this case up? Lafuki mi Rabbi Yehuda, in order to refute, to say we don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar, he says ad shigir b'shachar. He has a much later time. A woman can do miyun, can walk out of her marriage until she actually her hair grows longer, meaning that she actually has more growth, more pubic growth than just 2 hairs. So he's going to say we're going to delay this and say that she's got an extra few months in order for her to be able to do miyun. Kamash Malon. Therefore, this mission of this price, it comes to tell us not so. Delok Rabbi Yehuda, we do not hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Then the limkor benichse aviv ad shigehe ben esrim. So we said we have to wait till we're 20 in order to be able to sell property. Why do we bring that? Lafuki miman domer ben shmonas, right? In order to refute the opinion that we mentioned last week that you could sell land when you're 18.
Is Rabbi Yehuda saying a Bulgarians? Or is Rabbi Yehuda saying even beyond Bulgarians?
Rabbi Yehuda, it's a good question. He may have a extended definition of Bulgarians. Yeah, that might be what his point is. That it's a good question. Tosfos, I believe, is asking that question. He wants to know, is Rabbi Yehuda really saying that he's disputing when a girl becomes bas mitzvah? Is that really the whole point here? That she's bas mitzvahs later than anybody else? Or is it a halachic specific to miyun? I wasn't clear on exactly how Tosfos comes out on that, but I think that's exactly what Tosfos' question is on this. How are you understanding what Rabbi Yehuda is doing here? The hilchasa, the halacha is tochzman kilifnezman. The halacha is that we were wondering whether the 20th year is like he's 19 or whether the 20th year is like he's 21. The 20th year is like he's 19, right? We're going to consider that as underage. The hilchasa kegidol bar minasha, and the halacha is like Gidol bar minasha, who told us that if somebody is extra wise and a smart businessman at a younger age, his sales for land do go through. I do not know. I don't know that he's otherwise mentioned other than here, as far as I can recall. But meaning in this section, it might be a few other sections. I'll take a look and see if I can find them anywhere else. The Hilchas Mar Zutra, and the halacha is also like Mar Zutra, who said that testimony about land is not allowed for somebody 13, but only can testify about movable properties because testifying and sales go hand in hand. And the Hilchas Kamemar and the halacha is also like Amemar. This is like the sum up of the last 2-3 pages. And the halacha is also like Amemar, who says that a 13-year-old can give a gift of land, even if he can't sell land, because we said those are 2 different things. One is relating to the fact that kids love money, right? When there's a gift, there's no money involved. The Hilchas Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, the Kuluhu, and the halacha is like Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. In all of these cases, Kiddushin, Girish, and Chalitza, Miyun, all the cases that we just mentioned, the halacha is like Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel in this statement, in this memra. And so therefore, that sums up the halacha like everybody. Next Mishnah. Hamachalik Mechasav al Piv, if somebody is now doing a Shchiv Meirah gift, okay, this is like one of these Mishnahs that flips everything that we've learned sort of on our head. Up until this point, we've said, Shchiv Meirah gives a gift before he dies. He doesn't have to make a kinyan. This is the enactment of the Rabbanan. So if he's doing this Shchiv Meirah gift by just making a regular, saying, I want you to give it over. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Echad Bari Vechad Mesukon Nechasim Sheikhon Achrayas Nikne Bekesef B'Shtar B'Chazaka. Doesn't matter whether you're healthy, doesn't matter whether you're unhealthy. The only way to acquire goods is through land, is through money, through a contract, by a chazaka. And if you've got property that is not land, it's movable property, the only way to be able to acquire that is to be able to lift it and acquire it. So therefore, what's he holding? He's holding, there's no such thing as Shchiv Meirah. We didn't know that there was an opinion all this time. Rabbi Elazar, all out of the blue, comes up and says, all this time we've been discussing Shchiv Meirah. Rabbi Elazar pops up and says, I don't hold of this halakha of Shchiv Meirah. I'm not into it. Really? It doesn't matter whether you're sick, whether you're not sick. You've got to make a proper kinyan in order to transfer that. It's the only way that it works.
I'm not one for it.
Huh? Yeah. Well, not for, yeah. There was no rabbinic enactment to it. Amru lo, the Chachamim said to him, wait a second, we got stories like this, and you see that it was practiced. Maisa be'iman shel b'nei Rochel. We heard the case of b'nei Rochel, we quoted it earlier on, the story of the mother of the children of Rochel. Rochel was a man, so this is the wife of Rochel, or the mother of the children of Rochel. Shahaisa chula, she was sick. The Amra, and she said, Tenu kivinosi labiti, give my kivinosi. So it's either translated as a scarf or as a brooch or some kind of a pin. Expensive, it was an expensive item. V'hibishneim asar mon, it was 12,000 mon. A very expensive item. And she wanted to give it to her daughter. She had sons. Sons are supposed to inherit before the daughter. She didn't want to give it to her son. She wanted to give it to the daughter. Now, it could make sense because it's a piece of women's jewelry, but obviously it was significant value. The sons would have wanted it. Umesa. Now, she died. Now, we are precise in the language. She said, the Umrah, she said, she didn't do a kinyan. This was basically a command of a shchiv meirah. She was dying, and she said, I want this to go to my daughter. Rabbi Elazar, what are you going to do with this? Rabbi Elazar, you don't need to be able to establish. It says very clearly, all she did was say it, and we did it. The kaimus devareha, we followed whatever she said. Amar lahen. So Rabbi Elazar answers back. We hadn't heard this part, so this is where Rabbi Elazar answers back. He said to them, B'nei Rochel tikbareim imon. He said that the children of Rochel should be buried by their mother. They should have died first. Those children of Rochel were terrible people, meaning that he was alluding to the idea that it might not really have been halachically proper to give the expensive item to the daughter, but the Chachamim didn't like the sons very much, and therefore made every excuse to get this item to the daughter instead of the sons. Okay? Is it chinam? We don't know what the story is. We'll see. The Gemara is going to ask, what is the case with them, and what was the problem? Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Amar lehen Rabbi Eliezer lechachamim. Rabbi Eliezer lechachamim. Ma'aseh b'maroni echad shahaya b'Yerushalayim. There was a certain fellow from Maron, and he was in Yerushalayim. Right, Maron is up north in Eretz Yisrael. Right, Maron, I think it's probably the same place. He was in Yerushalayim, so it makes sense he's traveling around Eretz Yisrael. V'hayulo metaltal and harbe. Now, he had lots of movable items, but I guess he had them back home. He didn't bring all of this stuff with him. So now, ubikesh litnam b'matana. He wanted to give them away as a present. So he's now, what is he going to do? All of this stuff is back home, and he's in a situation where he's in an emergency. Sounds like he's going to die. Maybe it's a shchiv meirah case. That's what we're going to presume it is. That's the circumstance here. It's a shchiv meirah case, and he's going to die, and he wants to give away all of his possessions. He's in Yerushalayim. How's he going to do it? Amru lo, they said to him, Ein lahem takana. They said to him, the Chachamim said to him, you have no hope. You can't transfer these goods. Unless, ad shikne al gav karka, the only way you can do it is, you need to get some land, and you got to transfer it, as we said, by transferring the land, and then, when you transfer land, you can sell movable items together with the land.
If the movable items are on the land.
No, they don't have to be on the land. That was the big critical thing. We learned that. Remember, we had the case where Rav Papa was being the shliach for the large amounts of money, right? Mm-hmm. So he wanted to acquire that. They gave him a piece of land, and he acquired the loan, even though the money wasn't on the land.
So why does land play such a big factor? That's what I'm saying. What's the connection between land and
so without getting into it in detail, because we'll have to wait about 5-6 years to be able to get to it. But essentially, the nice thing about land is all land is connected to all land. So wherever it is, it's touching land.
Right.
So that's the short answer of all. But there's lots of discussion of exactly why this works. And there's a discussion in the Gemara about whether the item needs to actually be on the land as well. But this Gemara clearly presumes this was we're beyond that, right? The property is back in his house in Miron. He's in Yerushalayim. They said you need some property, otherwise you can't transfer land. So what did he do? He went and found a rocky little piece of cheap land near Yerushalayim. Okay. The Amar Tzifoni Laponi said, great, the very north part goes to so-and-so, the Imo, and with that transference goes Me'atzon, 100 sheep, Umea Chavios, and 100 barrels. The Deromo, the south part, Liponi goes to so-and-so, the Imo Me'atzon, with him, he gets 100 sheep, Umea Chavios, and 100 barrels. Umeis. And then he died. Okay? The Kaimu Chachamim es Divarav. And the Chachamim did what he said. So they followed through on this. And he was clever. He got a very cheap piece of land, and it worked. As long as he has something, it doesn't have to be a significant piece of land. That's all. So now, this is what Rabbi Eliezer is telling the Chachamim. He says, look, if it was a Shchiv Meirah, if Shchiv Meirah worked, why do you have to buy the land? Shchiv Meirah would have been enough. He could have made the commandment and transferred the property without a contract, without a kinyan. Right. And that would have been sufficient. Obviously, there needs to be a kinyan. Why they tell him to go through the whole process? Right. So therefore, the Chachamim answered, Misham Raya, that's no proof. Is that where your proof is coming from? Meironi Bari Haya. That guy from Meiron was perfectly healthy. It just happened to be the end of the story, is he died and they followed through. But he was very healthy. This was not a gift of a Shchiv Meirah. So therefore, it was just going to tell us the story about how to make such an acquisition. Amar Lehen B'nei Rochel, Tikvarein Iman. Now, this story of Bnei Rochel, we had heard this story before, but we hadn't heard this ending, very exciting ending, where we don't like the children of Rochel very much, and that perhaps we actually weren't following through on what is strictly the halacha because they're such evil people that we were trying to figure out a way to get this expensive item to the daughter who deserved it more than they did. So, my taima kalayit lehu. What is the reason why they were so cursed? What was wrong with the children of Rochel? Right? Yehuda says it's sinat chinam. Well, let's see. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says, Shmuel, Makaimi kotzim bekerem hayu. They did the terrible thing of growing thorns in their vineyard. Right. Everybody was all worried about this. What's the problem? So we know that there's a halacha midoraisa, a Torah rule. You're not allowed to grow wheat together with grapes. That's called kilayim. It's under the same category. Kilayim is the same category as shatnez. Right? You can't have wool and linen together. You can't grow wheat and grapes in the same field.
Like we know the connection between shatnez.
If you're going to ask me why, shatnez is one of those two examples that they say don't give an explanation. But by the way,
shatnez is Cain and
Cain and Hevel. I'll tell you that whenever Chazal say that there's no explanation for something, there are more explanations for that mitzvah, right? Because everybody can theorize, right? Everybody's got to theorize. But Cain and Hevel is kind of right. Why there are two types, whether there's two types of grapes and wheat being two different things here, and whether it relates also even Noach was planted, came back, he planted grapes versus planting wheat. It's a whole conversation about how those two, but they don't fit together. They don't go hand in hand. Now, not only is it inappropriate to grow grapes together with wheat, but other crops as well. Okay, so these thorns and thistles that were, I don't know if they were thistles, and they were growing these thorns in this vineyard, and that constituted the Isser D'Oraisa of Kilayim. Okay, so therefore, since they were in violation, and at this point in history, then when you would see people doing illegal things and they were not obeying Beis Din was very upset at them. So they refused to cut it down. Rabbi Eliezer l'tameh. Now, it also seems very important, though. Rabbi Eliezer said these were evil people, but the Chachamim didn't seem to think they were so evil. So if they were doing Kilayim, if they were in violation of Kilayim, why didn't the Chachamim think they were evil? Kilayim is the mixture of the grapes together with the other crops. So that's what they were doing. So why didn't the Chachamim think they were so bad? So the answer is Rabbi Eliezer l'tameh. It's Rabbi Eliezer according to his own reason. It's non. We've heard in the Mishnah. Hamakayim kotzim bekerem. Let's say you grow thorns in a vineyard. Rabbi Eliezer says, Kadesh. Kadesh, what does it mean? It's holy? No, it means that it is sanctified and being prohibited for use. Meaning that you cannot use the grapes, you cannot use the thorns. The whole thing is also, you got to burn it. The Chacham says, Lo Kidesh. Not so. Thorns do not invalidate the vineyard. Ella davar shekamo mekaymin. Rather, the only way for you to be in violation of Kilayim is if the other crop that's growing is an established crop. Thorns nobody wants. That's just the weeds. That's the stuff that grows in between. You don't want that. So you would love to pull it out. They're not growing it because they want to keep it. So, Bishlama kirkum chazi. I understand if they were growing kirkum, which is a kind of a spice that they were, that was a valuable commodity, right? So then I understand they were violating of the Isser. They grew grapes they wanted to keep. They grew kirkum they wanted to keep. Elakotzim l'may chazi. But who wants thorns? Why is that a crop? So Amar Rabbi Chanina says, my time at Rabbi Eliezer. Why would Rabbi Eliezer say it was a violation? Shekain ba'aravia mekayim kotzin besados ligmalehen. Because in Arabia, they grow thorns and they feed it to the camels. That's good camel food. Okay? So therefore, even though in Eretz Yisrael, they didn't, I guess, seem to have that many camels, and so therefore, these people were growing the thorns as camel food. And that was the argument. Did these thorns constitute an illegal crop or not? Rabbi Eliezer was saying, of course it was an illegal crop. And the reason why the Chum were so mad at them is because they were growing an illegal crop. The Chum said they weren't growing an illegal crop and nobody was mad at them. The reason why the gift was valid is because it was a shchit meirah.
Isn't it, the din is Medina, like wherever the area you have to get, whatever it is, the place you're at.
Yeah, minhag Medina, right? So you're going to go according whatever the normal business practice of that location would be. It must have been a place where it wasn't so common, but it wasn't totally uncommon either, right?
It was done.
So it was subject to machlokas. Rabbi Levi says, Konen kinyan mishchiv meira afilu b'Shabbos, right? we can transfer an item from a shchiv meira even on Shabbos. V'lo lachush l'divrei Rabbi Eliezer, and you don't have to worry about what Rabbi Eliezer says. Rabbi Eliezer says you need to have a real kinyan. Well, we can't make real kinyanim on Shabbos that you're going to have to write something down and transfer. So, but he says that Rabbi Levi says we can make a kinyan from a shchiv meira even on Shabbos. You don't have to worry about Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Ela shema titrov dato alav. Why? Because we have to be more worried that potentially the person's going to be all worried and upset, and it may cause him to pass away. And so therefore we are going to allow the transfer to take place. Okay. Right. So Rabbi Eliezer would tell you, if I'm transferring and I'm not making the kinyan, so then it's not valid. So then how can I do it? So says you don't have to worry about that. Okay. Now, says the next Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer says one step further. The Shabbos, Devar of Kayamin, if you're going to take a Shchiv Meira case, he says, I'm not going to tell you that Shchiv Meira never exists. Shchiv Meira can happen without a kinyan if it's Shabbos. Because you can't write. And therefore, since you cannot write, you're not going to be able to record your star, make a transaction of that sort. Hence, a kinyan of a shchiv meira is the only way possible for you to make this transference. That circumstance really says that's fine. But not during the week. During the week, there's nothing wrong with making a transfer. Therefore, we're going to insist on the transference, and that's Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua says, b'Shabbos, Amru, they said that was in fact the case by Shabbos. Kal v'chomer b'chol, and even more so during the week. Now, what does that mean even more so? If during the week, transference can occur by full means and all transactions are valid on Shabbos, on during the week, then on Shabbos, when transactions are limited, so if you can tell me that Shabbos, when transactions are limited, you can still do a shchiv meira case, for sure, you're going to do the shchiv meira case when transactions are more likely to be effective. That's how that Kal v'chomer works. Okay? Kayod sebo, similarly, zachin lekodem ve'ein zachin legodol. Similarly, to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says that since there's no way for a child to acquire something, since a child will have difficulty acquiring an object on their own, a person can acquire on behalf of a child. He doesn't have the das, he doesn't have the awareness, a young child doesn't have the das or the awareness. So then we're going to be able to acquire something for a child, ve'ein zachin legodol, but not for an adult. Right? So we're talking about even if the person's not there, right? But you're not allowed to do it for an adult. Why? Because the adult can do it for himself. So there's no reason. This is Rabbi Eliezer's consistency. If there's no other choice, we'll permit it. But if there is another better option, then there's no reason to be lenient, right? So if on Shabbos there's no other choice but a shchiv meira, we'll allow it. But during the week, if there's a better option, we'll go with the better option. No, Rabbi Yeshua says, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, he says, L'kodem amru kal v'chomer legodol. If when it comes to a person who has limited ability to transact goods, like a minor, then for sure it's going to be effective by an adult who has all the rights. So we're not going to be doesn't make sense to be more limiting by an adult than by a child. Child has less rights of transference. Therefore, if you can transfer goods without the permission of a child, for sure you can do that for an adult. That's a matter of their differing perspectives on the issue. Okay. If he's smart, that is correct. Because then we had the Pa'osa, we had the case of the children who were 6 and 7 years old, who were in fact able to make transactions on their own because they were in fact experts in the basics of business to be able to buy themselves food and things. The Chachamim were lenient on that. That's a good point. Yes. So this is not to the exclusion of that information. Says the Gemara, Masnis and Mani. Who was this Mishnah going like? Well, it turns out that there were actually two versions of this dispute between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Okay? One is Rabbi Meir's version, one is Rabbi Yehuda's version. So our Gemara says, Mani, it's Rabbi Yehuda here. Our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda's version. You see the two versions, and I see Rabbi Yehuda's version matches our Mishnah. Rabbi Meir's not so much. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Rabbi Meir, again, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi wrote down and summarized. He said, I'm just going to keep things simple. I'm just going to pick the version of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua's machlokas that we hold like. I'm not going to go with the two versions of the machlokas, right? So he picked in his Mishnah and he wrote just simply, here's the version of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Just turns out, just for the sake of, full picture, we're going to quote the Brisa that points out that there were in fact two different versions of this argument, this dispute, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Meir holds that Rabbi Eliezer's perspective was Bechol Devar of Kayamin, that he says, actually the opposite of what he says in our Mishnah. That really, during the week, you can do a shchiv meirah case. Why? Since you are able to make a kinyan during the week, you don't have to. This is what we call that roi lebila, called roi lebila. There's a concept that goes like this. Sometimes in halacha, you have to be able to do something, but once you're able to do that thing, you don't actually have to do it. The classic example of it is this. We had the example where somebody wanted to bring a mincha offering, and the mincha offering was in a very large container, but there's a maximum size for the container. So I want to bring a mincha offering of a size that's larger than that container can hold to mix with the oil. Now, if I mix it with the oil, it's going to splash, it's going to go over the sides. So therefore, if I want to bring an offering that's larger than that 60 saw size, I have to start another container. That was what we said. Now, the halach is you don't actually have to mix it. But the size of the container has to be large enough that if you wanted to mix it, you could.
Right.
Once the size of the container is large enough that if you wanted to mix it, you could, then the offering is valid. But even though you don't have to mix it, but if the container isn't large enough that you could mix it if you wanted to, then the whole offering is invalid, even if you don't mix it. Similarly here, right? Once the circumstance is that if during the week I could, so then we're going to allow you to do the shchiv meirah. Once you can write during the week, so then we'll let you also do a shchiv meirah case as well. But aval lo b'Shabbos, but Shabbos not so. Once you're limited in transactions on Shabbos, then we're going to be strict with you across the board, and you cannot perform a shchiv meirah transaction on Shabbos, which is the opposite of what Rabbi Eliezer holds in our Mishnah. He says you can on Shabbos and not during the week. Here he says you can during the week, not on Shabbos. Rabbi Yeshua says same thing as he says in our Mishnah. He says v'chol amru kal v'chomer b'Shabbos. They said that you could do it during the week. For sure, you can do it on Shabbos. Now he's saying the same thing, but he's saying it backwards. Before they said that you could do it on Shabbos, you could do it during the week. Kal v'chomer on this is the same thing, right? He says if you could do it during the week, he's saying the same thing. If you do it during the week, for sure you could do it on Shabbos, right? For again the same reason. Once you're able to conduct the transaction during the week, so then once you have let's say it the other way. Yeah, no, he did say it backwards, right? He said that if you could do it on once you can do it during the week, but once you could do it on Shabbos, for sure you could do it during the week, because the week you have more power of transactions. Here he's saying that once you could do it during the week where you have less power of transactions, for sure you could do it on Shabbos where you have no other choice. So that's how he reads it through. Now, practically, there's the difference between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yeshua and Mishnah. Practically, it's the same thing. He says you can do it during the week, you can do it during Shabbos. But he says it for different reasons. Kayotzebo, same thing. He says also is the same difference of perspective is going to be applied to the adult and the child. Zachin legodol ve'in zachin lekotan. Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer is again flipped. He says here you can acquire something on behalf of the adult, but not for the child. Right? Because the adult has greater ability to create an ability to make a transaction. He can make a shaliach, a child cannot. So therefore, even though this might or might not, depending on the Rishonim, whether this in fact works, whether being able to acquire something on behalf of somebody else works like a shaliach or it doesn't work like a shaliach, subject of big conversation amongst the Rishonim. But in any event, you see that an adult has greater ability to acquire than a minor does. Therefore, an adult you can acquire on behalf of him, but not for a child. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Rabbi Yeshua, no, he says the Godol Amru, for sure, if you could do it by an adult, Kal v'chomer lekatan, then for sure for a child who we have no other choice. There's no other way for us to get an acquisition to him other than this way, then for sure it's going to be able to work. How so? Between the Mishnah and this? Yeah. That's good, because that's what we were saying. This is Rabbi Meir's version. This is Rabbi Meir's version of the Mishnah. But Omer Rabbi Eliezer, so Rabbi Yehuda says no. That isn't the way the machlokas went. He says it's exactly like a Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer is the one who says Shabbos that on Shabbos his words are impactful. Because he's not able to do it any other way. But not during the week when he could do it another way. Rabbi Yeshua says for Shabbos Amru, they said it on Shabbos, but Kal v'chomer b'chol, and for sure, if it works on Shabbos, then when you have greater,
allowed to do opinion on Shabbos.
You are right. Midrabanan.
It's only midrabanan.
Only midrabanan.
Opinion does go through. It's just
also midrabanan. Yeah. That's correct. Most likely because the prohibition of what's called dabru davar, that you're not allowed to do weekday activities on Shabbos.
Right.
Now, there are other opinions and thoughts on the subject, including potentially one, I think one position in the Rishon does say it is Doraisa, but let's keep it simple and say that it's Dabur Davar, it's rabbinic in enactment, and that's why we can overrule it in the circumstance where Shchiv Meirah is in the fact. Okay. Kayotsebo, similarly, Zachin Lekotim Vin Zachin Legodol, Div Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says you can acquire something for a minor because he's got no other choice, but not an adult Vin Zachin Godol, but you can't do it for an adult. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says, and then Rabbi Yeshua says Lekotan Amru. They said that for a child, and Kal V'chomer, if an adult has more rights to transfer, for sure for a Godol you can as well. Okay.
Or maybe it's only referring to Shchiv Meirah, right?
This is talking about a Shchiv Meirah, that's right.
Right, so maybe that's why it's not considered a kinyan.
No, we're saying a Shchiv Meirah is a kinyan, even though.
No.
Oh, you mean he doesn't need a kinyan?
Right.
Yeah. Well, Rabbi Eliezer is holding. It seems like what Rabbi Eliezer is saying is that b'Shabbos dvar of kayamin without a kinyan. That is right. That is what he's saying. Right. That's what Rabbi Eliezer's opinion here is. Because it's Shabbos and you cannot do a kinyan, then we'll allow you to use the Shchiv Meirah without a kinyan.
Right.
Whereas during the week, he says, since you can use a kinyan, we will not let you go without a kinyan. You're right. You're right. Mm-hmm. Says in the Mishnah. Okay. The rest of the perek is Mishnayos of this style. Okay. So we're going to switch avenues away from Shchiv Meirah a little bit. Last little remaining issues of inheritance. And sometimes it makes a difference who dies before whom. Because when you have two relatives that die, whoever dies first transfers their possessions to the other person, and then that second person transfers it to their heirs. So at the same time, we're going to presume, in this Gemara, we're not presuming anybody dies at the same time. Either because there's a concept of EF Sholatam saying that two things can never occur at the same time. You can never presume that two things occurred at the same time. Or there's a chazaka to presume that that's not the case and something falls. In this case, a calamity, two people were in a house and the house collapsed. We don't presume that they both died exactly simultaneously. But we just don't know who died first. So that's our circumstance. So the first one. Nafal Abayis Alav V'al Aviv. Reuven's in the house. And he is in the house with his father Yaakov. The house falls on him and on his father. O Alav V'al Morashav. Or on him and his heirs. Right? For example, could be his brothers or somebody else like that. Somebody else who's so V'haisa Alav Ksubas Isha. Now Reuven owed his wife Ksuba. Ubal Chov. He also owed a debt to somebody. So these are not debts that are he has to pay those things, but he has to pay those things not by inheritance. He has to pay those things because he owes them as debts. Okay, so if Yorshei, so let's start this. Yorshei Avomrim, the heirs of the father, so they're making the following claim: Habein Meis Rishon. They're saying the son Reuven died first, V'yachar kach Meis Ha'av. Then the father died. In that circumstance, Reuven's possessions went to the father, and then from the father, they went back to the other heirs. Now, we can take a look, wait a second. Father and a son, aren't their heirs just about identical? Who's going to be Reuven's heirs? Reuven's brothers, because they're the father's sons. Either way, they're going to get the money. The answer here is that's what the issue isn't whether the heirs are going to get the money, most of it. The only issue is whether the ksuba or the debt gets collected before the heirs get the rest of the money.
Right.
So if the son died first, so then he never had the money to pay off the ksuba or to pay off the loan. Therefore, his money when he died, his money got inherited by the father, and then the father transferred it over to all of the other heirs. Okay? So, Balei Chov Omrim, but the debtor, the creditors, they're saying, Ha'av Meis Rishon, the father died first, hence all the money came to the son. Once the son had all the money, well, he owes us money. So before the other heirs are going to get the money, we get to collect it first. So they're arguing that they get first rights of this pool of money that came from the father.
I see what you're saying. If the father's debt basically couldn't cover, if the son died
If the
first,
son's debt
and the father,
right,
if the
exactly.
father couldn't cover the debt, the son's money doesn't go to the debt because it was already separate. But if the father died first, and then it went to the son, and then it went to the brothers, that means the brother's money will be the brother takes on the choiv,
That's correct.
and then it gets transferred.
So therefore, if the father's money gets added to the son's estate, right, then the son's estate now has enough money to pay off all the debts first.
Right, and his money has to go towards it because part of them. It's correct. Because he inherited the debt. Okay,
yes.
Fine.
So they're going to say. So they're saying, right? So then, here's what happens. Beis Shammai Omrim, now it's going to be not so simple. Beis Shammai Omrim Yachloko. Beis Shammai says, here's what you got. You've got two different people making a claim on this money. You don't know who wins, right? Because you've got the heirs who say that they have a right to it,
right.
And then you have the people who are the creditors, the lenders, the woman who's got the ksuba or the lender. They have rights to it, but you don't know who wins. So you're going to split it, right?
Split the brother's money if the father were to die first. That's what they're saying. If the father dies first,
correct.
You split the money. That's
right. However, Beis Hillel omrim nechasim bechez kosam. But Beis Hillel says not so, right? They are certain heirs, meaning you have to look at it like this: the people who are collecting the ksuba only get the ksuba if the father died first.
Right.
The heirs get the money regardless of if the father died first or the son died first. They have a claim on it either way.
Right.
This is what we call a suffix and a vadai. The heirs say, I have a definite claim against this money. We have a definite claim. The people who own the contracts have a doubtful claim. They only have a claim if one of the two things happened. If the father died first, then we have a claim.
Right.
But not if the son died first. Well, the heirs, the Yorshim say, we have a right to this money regardless. So therefore, we have a stronger claim than you. Hence, we should get it. That's how Beis Hillel works.
That's the thing. It's a question of who died first. Nobody knows, right?
That is correct. And Beis Hillel's point is, according to the Yorshim, it doesn't matter who died first. We're getting the money anyway. But the Baalei Chov, you have a doubt, so therefore you don't get it. So
the stronger claim.
That's right. So here's the Gemara. Now we're going to have this discussion. Tanan Hassam. We learned in a Mishnah over there, which happens to be later on in our Masechta and Daf Kuf Ayin Hey. Hamalves Chaveru Bishtar. Somebody loans money to his friend with a contract. So then Gova Minichasim Mishud Bodim. Then that contract entitles you to collect from mortgaged property. Meaning, person has property and he sells it. Even after he sells the property, a lender can come and collect the money that was sold and take possession of it in payment for his loan. Then the buyer has to go and get money back from the seller, right? But the lender is guaranteed payment from all the property, right? So let's take, for example, it would be like similar nowadays, except that the bank won't let you, right? But if I own a house, right, and I have a mortgage on it, and now I need some money, so I sell my house, right? I still have to pay the mortgage. Well, nowadays the bank will say, well, yeah, you have to pay the mortgage with the money as soon as you sell the house. But so what happens is that they would say, no, you pay the loan because the loan is over 30 years. There's nothing changed, but now you don't own the house. So that's fine. So you keep paying. What happens at what point you can't make your payments? Then the bank can come and confiscate the house from whoever you sold it to, because the house was the property that was mortgaged to the loan.
I go back. I'm so sorry. I don't want to go back.
That's okay.
Okay. Father died.
Yes.
Right? No. Son dies first. Father dies second.
Mm-hmm.
So that means the father inherits what the son has.
That's right. That's right.
Now that money goes to the brothers. Why would it be considered separate? It's still from the father's estate. Everything becomes part of the father's estate. So it should still, meaning, it's still part of the father's estate. Why would it be kept separate? That doesn't make sense to me.
The issue is like this, right?
Like I was understanding.
Reuven,
but I'm like,
you have to start with the presumption this. Reuven does not have enough money to pay off his debts.
Right.
That's where you're starting. He doesn't have money to pay off his debts.
Right.
So when he dies, you're right. His estate has to go pay the ksuba, has to pay for the debts. The thing is, he's broke. He doesn't have anything. Okay. Well, so now afterwards, the father dies.
Right.
The father's estate doesn't go to pay the son's loans.
I mean, it goes towards the son. It goes towards,
No,
you're talking about,
because
Reuben
the
died
son's already,
first.
yes,
Reuben died, and Reuben had the debt.
yes.
That's what you're
Reuven is the
saying.
one with the debt.
Right, but the father acquires the debt.
It's much easier to think of it like this.
But
No,
the
he
father-
doesn't.
Why doesn't the father acquire the debt? If the father's the inheritor, why wouldn't he acquire the debt? Same way that of course he acquires the debt, right? Like it's the same way by both ways. Why is it not bilateral like that?
Because he's not inheriting any property of Reuven's. That's why I'm saying that the easy way to think of this is, imagine Reuven has no money, but he has debt. The father has money, he has no debt. That's the easy way to think of this, okay? So therefore, when Reuven dies, you're right, the debt, his property is mortgaged to his debt, but he doesn't have any money.
Right?
So that's the end of it.
But who takes over the property? You're saying, he doesn't have a property. He has no property.
That's right.
It's just debt under his name.
That's right.
Oh, okay. So that's
The father doesn't have to use his money to pay off his son's debt.
Right.
So once the son dies, well, too bad you
It's
can't
only
collect.
if he acquires the land.
That's
That
the
has
issue.
debt tied
So
to
now the other way though, if the father died first, now Reuven becomes a very wealthy landowner.
Right.
Well, now guess what? He has to pay off his debts.
Right.
That's the issue. That's where the owners are going, wait a second. He became a very wealthy landowner. He owes us money.
Right.
Right? So that's the issue.
Right.
Okay. So first of all, somebody who loans money to his friend with a contract can collect it with encumbered properties. Al yedei edim, if the loan was just with witnesses and there's no written contract, gova menechasim b'nei chorin, then he can only collect from unmortgaged properties, metaltal and movable items, or whatever is currently in his possession. He cannot go after sales. The bottom line of that is, the rationale is that a person who's making a land purchase has to do some research on his own, right? And the bottom line is, if I find out that you are heavily in debt to people, I'm taking a great risk buying your land, right? Because if you owe a lot of people money, the chances that a collector is going to come if you don't pay your bills and take the land from me is higher, right? That's correct. So I know I'm going to be in trouble. So as you just said, you got to check the credit score. How are you going to check a credit score? So the answer is, I look through contracts. What's out there in the public record? So I go to the local base stand and I look through and I find out what contracts are out there. If there are just witnesses that recognize that witnessed the sale, it may be difficult for the purchaser to be able to certify and verify all the loans that there are out there. Therefore, when it comes to contracts, that is property. That's where I can go and collect land.
Right.
But when it's movable when it's witnesses, then I can only collect from movable property. I cannot go after the land that's been sold. Okay? So that's how it works. Boy Shmuel. Shmuel wants to know a question. And this doesn't really, we're going to use our Mishnah as a proof of this. So don't worry, this doesn't really relate to our Mishnah yet. So get your mind wrapped around this issue. Okay? His question is like this. De'ikni v'konamahu. What if a person writes in the contract, right? He wants to borrow money. He doesn't really have any land. So therefore, the person doesn't want to lend him money, right? He doesn't have much land. So what he says is, the land that I'm going to get in the future will be mortgaged to this debt. Right? Maybe he's actually going to take this money and buy land with it, right? So we understand that when I own land and I borrow money, what I own gets mortgaged to the loan. That we understand. The question is, can I make a plan to mortgage that which I'm going to get? I borrowed the money. I borrowed $100,000 today. I'm going to go take that money. I'm going to buy land with it in a month. Can I make that land a security for the loan that already took place? That's the question. Yes. Let that sink in. No, that's the easy answer. All right, let's go. Huh? Do you hear what he's trying to do?
Yeah, he's trying to do something.
I'm trying out my credit score.
Right.
I'm trying out my credit score, right? So he says, I'm trying out my credit score. I have no land, but don't worry. I'm about to become a very big investor in land.
Right.
And the money that I have invested in land is going to be the security for the loan. Just loan me the money today, and then I'll mortgage whatever I buy.
No, because I would imagine the same way you can't sell fruit from a tree that hasn't grown.
Amazing. See, you're already see. This is what happens. You start to do Daf Yomi for a little bit. Davar Shalom Bal Yom. You already know what's coming. So, first of all, Ryan says, Aliba de Rabbi Meir. He's going to tell if you're going to hold like Rabbi Meir, Damar Adam Makna Davar Shalom Bal Yom. He says you can do that.
Right.
So then Loti Boyach. There's no question. Then for sure you can do that, right? Right. If I can sell something that doesn't exist, for sure I can mortgage something that doesn't exist.
Right.
And that's for sure. Devade Kana, that for sure works. Sorry? Because Rabbi Meir is of the position that you can hedge. Right? That's exactly what a hedge fund is, right? Correct. I'm selling something that I don't have on the presumption, the prediction that it will occur. Rabbi Meir says I can, right? However, he believes that transaction takes place by leaving over a little bit of the ends of the fruit tree or whatever. Remember those circumstances, but he believes it will occur. Ella, but Brian says it shouldn't work the other way, right? But he says no. Kiti boy lachaliba the rabbanon. The question though does exist according to the rabbanon. Amri eno the makda davar shlo balio. According to the opinion, says you cannot do that. Amar Rav Yosef says Toshma. Why would you be allowed to do it? Because this is not the same thing as purchasing something that doesn't exist. This is simply promising to mortgage it later on. It's a little bit different. Right, you don't own it. How can you promise to mortgage something later on? The answer is, I'm simply promising to do something later. It is weird. I hear you. Right?
I mean, I guess the difference is in the case with the tree, the fruit doesn't even exist.
That's it.
Whereas this, the land exists.
That's true. Right?
But even still, like, based on what are you saying? I obviously there has to be documentation to prove that you're going to own it first, even
because he says, and this is what the Masifta says.
That says it's like I bought a house that I don't take possession of.
The land exists in the world.
Right.
He just doesn't own it today.
Right.
He can, right? He can promise to mortgage it. It's not davar shelo bal yom. Davar shelo bal yom, the examples that we had was, I'm selling you the figs of the tree that will grow. Or a man comes over to a woman and says, you know, we'd get along. As soon as you get divorced, we're going to get married. And here's the kiddushin. Can you do that?
No.
It's a davar shelo bal yom. Rabbi Meir says you can.
Right. Right. According to the same example.
Right. So you see, right. I'm giving you the strange examples, but these are the Gemara's examples, right? So this is the question. Okay, now, Toshma, let's try to bring a proof or two before we stop. Here's what happened. There was a circumstance where Reuven and Shimon are having a dispute. Reuven says, Shimon, you owe me $1,000. Shimon says, I paid you. And I'm going to tell you how I know it's true. Because you then came to me and sold me some land. Now, why would you sell me land? You sold land because you needed money. That's why somebody sells money. Now, if I really owed you money still, why would you get money by selling me land? All you had to do was come and collect the debt. Clearly, if you went and sold me land in order to get money, it shows that I really don't owe you. Your actions prove that I don't really owe you the money. Okay. Says Rab, but the Chachamim say, no, what are you talking about? The guy was a genius. Listen to this amazing move. The guy took a look at the guy and he says, you owe me $1,000. And the guy looks like he's not paying. So he says, what's going to happen to me? He's got no land. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to him. I'm going to sell him $1,000 worth of land. The guy goes, great. He takes $1,000. He doesn't want to pay the loan back, but to invest in land, that he's going to do. So he gives me $1,000 and now takes the land. Now what? The loan comes due. What am I going to do? Grab the land back. I got my money and the land. I won. I'm so smart. Isn't that a genius move? I used to have a guy who was going to me $1,000. I had an unsecured loan of $1,000. I played a trick and I got the guy to buy the land for me so that it would secure the loan and I was able to get my land back and my money. So there you go, right? So he was genius, a great move. Shemachar lo akarka, he sold him the land. Because now the land becomes the security for his own loan.
Right.
Okay. So now that's a proof. Why is that a proof? Because wait a second. How did the land become a security for his own loan? When the loan took place, he didn't own the land yet. He had to buy the land. He made the loan and then bought the land. And then the guy comes along and says, okay, great. That's your mortgage. I'm taking it. That proves that when you buy something later on, it becomes mortgaged.
No, but he did it after. No, because no.
It's good. The Gemara is going to say no. So if he comes up with the answer, it's great.
Because what happened is he bought the land, and that's the only time he could take. It wasn't secured on futures; it was secured on the time he bought the land. That's when it becomes. When
he made the loan, there was no land. Right. The land was not his.
Right.
So therefore, then a month later, he goes and he buys a piece of land.
Right.
And now that land is secured?
Right. At that moment, now I can take security. Not before I buy the land.
How could I take security? But that's the whole question. Right. How did a piece of land that wasn't mine at the time of my loan become secured to my loan?
But no, because in the future...
You were the one who was just arguing the other way. You told me
No. I said I can't make a promissory. I can't make it out deny on the land I'm going to buy. But once the land has come into my possession, now I can take security against it.
Well, you're going backward. You're going two ways, because you can't say when I bought the land, I can't make the promise because I don't own it yet. But then as soon as I buy it, I can make the promise.
Because you don't own anything at that point. You can't take a mortgage on something I don't own. But you can take a mortgage on something I do own. So
yes, but But what is it that caused the mortgage? Okay, the loan that already existed.
If you owed me $1 million,
yes,
right? And at this point you don't own anything.
Yes.
But then you go buy something.
Yes.
I can try to take security against that.
But the loan at the time of the loan was either secured or it wasn't.
But I can't secure something you don't own against something you don't own.
Okay, so therefore you're telling me that when I borrowed the money,
right, this
loan was not secured. Then later on, I came upon $1 million property.
No, I could try to secure it. I don't know if I could try to secure it.
So what happened? The reason why it became secure is because I promised to secure it. That was how I wrote the contract. I'll borrow $1 million from you. As soon as my father's sick and he's a millionaire. So as soon as I get something, I'll secure it to you.
It's on that.
That's what it's based on. It was based on that promise.
I thought it meant like he just went out and bought a piece of land and then he went to secure it. Just because
no, it's because Da'akni says, I'm going to secure it.
I'm like, okay, but you own land. Right?
He's going to secure it. Okay, so says Rabbi, I'll tell you why it's not the same way. Why it's not the same. He says it's very simple. Amalei Rava, there's an obvious distinction in this case why it doesn't apply. Because Mine Kamart, are you saying that the guy went to collect his own loan from the person who he sold it to? Mine Afila Miglima Del Kaspe. If you're going to collect a loan from the person who borrowed the money from you, you can collect any possession that is currently in his possession. You can even collect his own coat. You could take his car. It doesn't have to be land. Right. The question is, the real question that we were asking is, what would have happened is that this fellow, Shimon, would have bought the land and then he sold it to another person. Now comes Reuven to get the land and it's gone. Can he go to the other person to get it? That was the question. It's not mortgaged until...
No, he can't. He can't go against it.
You're so convincing. Yes.
No, because that's what I'm saying. It was, he couldn't do it at that point because he didn't get secured in the first place. I thought the question was being asked, can I secure it now against once he's bought the land, can I secure it against the land? And the answer is yes.
Okay, so you're saying yes. Like in this case, you're right. The land is there. So then in that case, it's not really secured. It's just another piece of property that I can use to pay.
That's what I was trying to say.
Fair enough, right? But that's not our question. The question is, when the guy then sells the land to a third party, can the creditor go and get that mortgage property away from the third party, saying it was credited to my loan first?
No, I would imagine no.
Okay, so this is our continuing. So this is our consideration. Our question is, Dikni kanamachar, Dikni kanavahorish. What is the circumstance when the person says, I promise whatever I'm going to acquire is going to become mortgaged to your loan, and then he actually acquires something, but then he sells it, or then he transfers it in inheritance to the next person. Then what is the case there? It's 9:37. Do we have our minion? So I'm going to go through one more case. So just you wave at me as soon as if you count 10. Okay, that will stop because no point in stopping until we get our minion, right? Okay. Amar Rav Chana. So Rav Chana says, Toshma, come and listen. Now comes our Mishnah. Usually these are the arguments that come in, and then we see how our Mishnah ties into them. Nafal Abayis alav alaviv. The house fell on him and on his father. Alav al Murishav. On him and on his heirs. The Haisa alav Ksubas Isha. This fellow, Ruvain, had a Ksuba he owned. Ubal Chov. Or he had creditors that he owned. Yorshe Av Omrim. The people who were going to inherit the father, they said, Habein Meis Rishon. The son died first. Therefore, the debt, he didn't own anything. So therefore the debt's gone. Then the father died, so therefore we get the whole inheritance. And the people who were owed the money, they say, Ha'av Meis Rishon, the father died first, and therefore it comes to us, therefore it came to the son, therefore we can come and collect. Now, if you're going to tell me that the property that you get in the future doesn't get transferred over to a loan, so then, let's say the father did die first. Isn't this a circumstance where the son's loan, Ruvain's loan, was already in existence? Then he came into possession of land that he inherited from his father afterwards. What gives the right of the lenders to go and say, we want that money first?
Right. Okay.
The loan already took place months ago.
Right.
The father just died right now. Now the creditor's going, hey, you know what? Since the father died, you inherited the land. It's ours. Why is it yours? They didn't own it at the time of the loan. It came into his possession later.
That's a different case. You can't use that. I hear what he's trying to draw. It's trying to draw a similarity. But in the first case, the money was actually secured against the land. The Malve already secured it against the land.
He couldn't have.
What do you mean?
Because he couldn't have secured it against the land because Reuven didn't own it yet.
Oh, wait, it was...
Reuven owes the money. The father owns the land.
Right.
The reason the creditors are coming and saying, Reuven, the father's money has to come and pay our debt.
Right, of course it does.
Of course it doesn't.
No, because the father... Wait, once he acquires it, he has to pay back the debt to the creditor.
Why? The loan took place months ago. This money wasn't mortgaged.
If you owe me money, I'm allowed to secure.
That's the question we're asking.
I'm allowed to secure a lien
on money that doesn't exist at the time of the loan. That's the question.
No, but after the fact, I can't make a promise, and I can't make a future promise on something I don't know. I can be like, listen,
you have to be able to.
I'm buying Montreal tomorrow.
You're saying you can't make a promise to something, except that as soon as it happens, then the promise happens.
No, I can't. No, I'm saying I'm not making a promise. I'm securing on that loan at that moment.
We have a minute. All right, we're gonna stop here. Shkoyach, everybody.
My question makes sense, or my question doesn't make sense?
No, it's fair. It's just I think
does it make sense?
yeah.